Well, dude, good to see you, man.
Good to see you too.
Thanks for coming on the Bathroom Break podcast.
So perfect. Bathroom Break podcast.
We can go take a dump in one of these cars. Dude, all these amazing Porsches. I mean, every time I come to see you, there's a whole bunch of different cars and cool stuff. And you got old pork over there.
Yeah. I mean, it's...
What's that about?
Well, people, like every car's got a nickname,
Yeah.
I mean, this guy...
Like Piss Biscuit.
Piss Biscuit. Mr. Urinal Cake.
Yeah.
No, so this guy, he called Porsches pork chops.
Oh, okay.
And so, he likes 427 Cobras. Like, that's his thing. Or
Yeah.
289 Cobras. More of American muscle guy, and so he was always making fun of Porsches, and then he got one.
Yeah.
And so he put the old license plate on there, old pork.
Oh, nice. So then he got one, and that kind of changed his whole mindset?
No, not yet.
No?
Not yet. I don't know. The guy had money to burn. I don't know what caused him to want one, but he wanted one. And so, it ended up here, which is fine by me.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
Yeah, it's been here a long time. Ready for it to go home.
Well, we just went for a cool ride in the that other 911, or which one is that?
The 97 993 twin turbo.
993. It's crazy because I don't know enough about the Porsche. Like, I love the car. My brother, that's how we met. But it's crazy how many different numbers there are. And you look at it and go, there's a 911. But really, it's not. It's moved on to...
So the flagship car, Porsche, is the 911, right? So that is what they're known for, that classic shape or whatever. But internally, there's internal designation numbers.
Okay.
And so the 911 can be subdivided into the letter cars, which are like the F bodies and the G bodies, right? There's the 901s, the 911s, the 964s, the 993s, the 996, and I mean and you can slice it thinner and thinner and thinner, but basically the subdivisions kind of tell what era the car is, but they're all 911s because it's a flagship car.
Yeah,
right?
that makes a lot more sense because I figured something like that where it was sort of the year of it indicated what era the car was.
Exactly, like models, like for example, you can have well, I mean, like I said, they're all 911s, right? But you can have a 997.1 or 0.2, right?
Okay.
So that's like a mid-life cycle changeover where they said, okay, after this many years, we found out that the car needs this stuff to make it fresh and new again and make it perform better and so on and so forth. And so they have the 0.2 version, the Mark II version.
It's kind of like the update on your phone, right?
Yeah, planned obsolescence. Exactly.
God, that new update is awful. They always fuck it up, and somehow then you got to go buy a new phone.
Yeah, that's like I said, planned obsolescence. The more you update your phone, the more worthless it gets.
Yes,
it's great.
Exactly. So hopefully that's not the case with the Porsches, but
no, it's the opposite, man. The more updated they get, the cooler the old ones get, man.
Yeah. No, it's rad. Well, it's funny. I wanted to tell the story a little bit of how we got to know each other. Marco Gerace is, the owner and operator of TLG Auto. Originally, your dad and mom started this place way back.
Yeah, 1978.
Yeah, and we got to know each other because my brother is a big Porsche fan and has a couple of the cars and I think you had met you had done some work on his car.
No. So what happened was I worked on this guy Reza. I built Reza and Luke.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so the East Coast contingent, somehow Luke found us for this project car that he had, right?
Right.
And so we got connected to the East Coast guys through Luke. And, Luke said, hey, we have this great event out in, it was like Massachusetts. No, it wasn't Massachusetts. It was
Connecticut?
New Hampshire.
Oh, New Hampshire, yeah.
They had this great event in New Hampshire. You got to go. And I'm like, all right, I'll go, right?
Yeah.
And so I fly out, I do the event, and I meet this gang of characters, right? And one of whom happens to be your brother.
Yeah.
And so it's a late night of drinking. We're at this it's a kind of a ski resort, but off season. So we're in a condo with 5 dudes. We all got our own rooms or whatever.
Yeah.
But we're all in the living room, hanging out, having a drink, talking late into the night. and I keep hearing Rob, you know, and I'm looking at this guy, and from the peripheral profile, I'm like, I know this face and like this voice. You know, because you and your brother, like, I mean, in the dark, you're probably the same person.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, it like there was this revelation where I asked him, you know, how do you spell your name? And he's like, R-A-A-B. I'm like, that's not Rob, that's Rab.
Yeah.
You know? And he's like, no, that's like sort of how people say it. And I go, you related to Rab himself? He goes, yes, my younger brother. Motherfucker, I know him. Like, I grew up watching the show, you know? Like, so, because I remember the CKY videos. I used to work in a record store, and these dudes would trade them in, and like, I swiped one because it was fucking dope. Yeah. And my roommate was a skater kid. Yeah. And so anyway, that's how I found out about you and the Jackass crew and the, you know, BAM and all those guys. But it was funny because there's like this whole like massive separation of time and place, and yet I somehow found your brother, and then you and I got to know each other, and we've become friends. And I just think it's really cool, you know.
I know, and it's funny because I always bust his balls because he changed his name to Rob when we were like 25 years old. You're like, dude, it's been Rab our whole lives. And now all of a sudden you're this Rob guy.
Who's
like,
you like broccoli Rob? What are you doing here, man?
It was like, he's like, well, that's how it's supposed to be pronounced. I'm like, yeah, but no one ever said it right in Philadelphia. They always said Rab. Yeah. And my grandfather said Rab. So then it was like, what? Rob? I'm like, well, this is the weirdest. And then like I was like, oh, I was like, I think you're trying to get away from the name because I'm the dude that shit on things, and you're like this doctor guy, and you know, and it's like graduating medical school, like, I should be Dr. Rob instead of Rab.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so that's the thing, right? Like when my dad moved from New York to LA, he met my mom. And my mom started using when they got together and they got married, whatever. Yeah. The last name was pronounced Gerace. Out here, because it was more Italian when she, out here, so she started using the name Gerace. But back east, he was Gerace. For 40 years, or like to this day, it's still the Gerace family. So East Coast is Gerace, West Coast is Gerace. Yeah, but they're both right,
and it makes sense because I was asking you that. I was like, how should I say it? Because I've heard both, and I'll hear like Mondi or something say like Gerace. I'm like, I think it's Gerace, but I don't know. Like same thing as ours. It's like Rab or Rob, and I'm like, dude,
but only one of them's right.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how you pronounce it, but only one of them's right.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, if you say Rob, I'm like,
R-O-B, like
some dude named Rob. Yeah. Like people will say that on set that are trying to pronounce it right. I'm like, I don't know who that is. But Rab works, But so I'll call Dave up from time to time, my older brother, and be like, hey, what's up, Rob? It's Rab calling, Shut
up, dick.
Yeah. But it was funny because he connected us when I had moved back out to California. I had been here in the early 2000s, and then I went back to Philly, and then I came back out again. And he was like, dude, while you're out there, you should meet up with Marco. And I was like, oh, okay. And came over to just, meet and check out the cars and all that. And I remember you're like, hey, let's go grab a beer. And I was like, I'm cool, because I was sober.
I'm like, what's wrong with me that this guy doesn't want to hang out with me? You don't even know me. I'm not that bad of a guy.
Yeah, like we just met. You don't even want to have a beer? Come on, man. I'm like, well, and it was like kind of, I was only a couple years sober, I think, at that point. And I was still at a place of like, uncomfortable of how to say I don't know, maybe we can get coffee or something, like, and it would be so awkward, but
it doesn't ever need to be.
It didn't, but I was that way with anybody because the normal thing to say is, hey, let's go grab a beer, and you're like, yeah, and normally and then I just got uncomfortable with like, oh shit, how do I answer that to make it like, yeah, let's go do that, and I realized, just say yeah and go and don't
have
get a beer.
Soda. Yeah. I didn't ever say, I don't think I said, hey, let's go have a beer. I said, let's go have a drink.
Yeah.
Like, and for me, a drink is anything fluid in a glass or a can or a bottle. Like, it doesn't matter as long as it's together with fluid. Like, we're good.
Exactly. Would have worked, but I'm all rejecting you. You're like, well,
damn, dude.
Do I smell? Yeah. But but then it was funny because you kind of put two and two together, and I think because you've lived in a family that promotes sobriety and the fact that your dad had been sober for so long, and so I think you kind of quickly were like, wait a second, are you friend of Bill? And I was like, yeah. And then
So you're not ducking me.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And you're like, I got to meet my old man. And I always laugh because I tell the story, but it's like, I go to meet your dad, and you're like, hey, Dad, this is Chris, and he's in the program and stuff, and he goes, what are you doing tonight? And I'm like, I guess I'm going to a meeting with you. He's like, yeah, Thursday nights at 7 or 8 o'clock or whatever over at this place. And I was like, all right. And then I ended up going over there, and then he became my sponsor and was my sponsor for years, and until he passed. But it was amazing, such an amazing guy, and obviously this is the house that he built, and
Absolutely.
and I I don't want to get choked up about it, but
No, go ahead, man.
He's done a lot of amazing things for me in my life, and I knew that. But then also, when we went to his service, the thing, and I talk about this a lot because it was so incredible to me. There was like 1,000 people there, and I'm not exaggerating. There was actually probably maybe more, but there was so many people in this place. And someone went up and said the coolest thing. They said, "Oh, how many of you know Tony from the Porsche community?" And about half the people raised their hand. And then he goes, "How many of you people know him from the AA community?" And the other half raised their hand. And he goes, "And how many of you has Tony helped?" And everybody raises their hand.
That's cool.
And I still get chills about it because I'm like, God, that's how I want to be remembered, in a way where that's what you left on this planet, is that like all of these people you helped and made such a difference in their lives. And I always said this because when someone passes, especially in our AA community, it's like you don't realize how much they're doing until when they go, then all the people come out of the woodwork, and you're like, holy crap, he's been helping them, and now I didn't even know you were sponsoring that guy and this guy and this guy, and then it's like, oh my God. So it was incredible just to see all that, the people that he had.
Well, the funny thing
helped.
is,
And
my dad sat on a panel, a monthly panel for like 10 years or more.
Yeah.
Right. And he was, I remember he looked forward to going to Warm Springs. And he did this panel. He inherited the panel from somebody who had done it for 10 or 15 years. Then he did it for 10 or 15 years until they closed Warm Springs.
Yeah.
And he brought people into that. And it was this this torch that was passed on.
Yeah.
And my dad was really good at doing that, right? Like passing the torch. That's what this place is for me, right? Like he built this thing, and then the plan was for him to give it to me, to take it and carry it into the next generation. Happened a little sooner than we were expecting.
Right.
And we had started to work towards that end, so there were some processes in place, but the bottom really dropped out when he passed away. We weren't prepared for that. But to your point, like, he was really good at carrying things forward and like involving people and sharing with things, and it's really cool to hear how you were affected by that. I don't remember that day. Like I remember the day of the service or whatever, and I remember a lot of people being there, and I remember them spilling out of this massive tent.
Yeah, it was
a tent.
Huge. It was like a big event.
It was a lot of people, and all the food got eaten, and everyone was happy. But it was funny. You specifically say, how many people are here for the Porsche? How many people are here for sobriety? How many have you helped? And I remember looking at the crossover. Very few people raised their hand for both Porsche and the sobriety thing. And it was funny because I realized my dad led two very distinct, separate lives. Yeah. And so it's, you see kind of how well-rounded my dad was as a person. To be able to have both of those things and affect so many on both sides. But he was, 60-something years old. He'd been doing one for 50 years, and he'd been doing one for 30 years. So, you're gonna meet some people.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that was what was it blew me away too. I think, and then because I just met him through you, and then got to know him and got to know your mom, and and they'd invite me over for Thanksgiving and do all that, and
cool.
It's so cool, and I just felt like a part of the family immediately. And I know everybody else feels like that when they would come in contact with him. You immediately feel like he was like a gruff dude in the sense of like, shut the fuck up, sit down and do this and whatever. But at the same time, like this really warm person underneath that would then bring you in and be like, all right, like once you're in there, then you're in there
forever. Yeah.
And that's what it felt like, because I remember just sitting at your, at the table in your house and going through step work and doing that stuff with him, and he gave me so much time, and it means a lot. And I've told you that before, but it really does. It's like help to give me a life again. And
that's awesome.
And I was sober before I met him, but he was kind of just such a integral part of my sobriety and solidifying my sobriety to a point where I feel, confident and strong in it, and it gave me good habits to keep, going
cool.
forward. And
you before you met him, you weren't drinking, and then when you met him, like you were in sobriety, like you were working.
Yeah, like I had worked a program before him too, and things were good. I just know, like, I went back through the steps with him and did that again, and then really got, like, cause I was drifting there for a little bit. Like, my buddy Ryan Dunn died when I was a year and 9 months sober, and then I moved out here like right after that, and then and I was just sort of fading, and and I was sort of just like, I'm not going to that many meetings, I'm not doing this.
I remember that.
And then like he brought me back in and got me in the thing, and it was like, it just saved me at a time where I needed to, and it's just cool that that he obviously that he so freely gave that, and it kind of taught me to do that, and I've been able to sponsor some guys and do some things because of your dad showing me the way, and I just glommed onto him and did the meetings he did and did what he did, and was like, I want what that dude has, because he's like got a good family, he's been running a great business, and he's going to meetings all the time, and he's 25 plus years. Because when I met him, he was 23 or 22 years, and then 27 when he passed. But with all those years, he's still going to 5 meetings a week, 6 meetings a week, whatever, just still doing it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of opened my eyes to the fact of, like, you don't just go in and take what you need and then leave. It was like, you got to give back, and you got to keep helping and doing that, and that
realization doesn't always happen. Like, I mean, I'm not in program, I don't go and work program or whatever, but like, I just remember from being in and out of the rooms over the years with my parents and whatever. It's not until you start to really. Some people take a long time to figure that part out, that you got to give back a little bit, right?
Yeah.
It's a very selfish program, as they say. But no, it's true.
Selfish people.
It's selfish people, selfish program, Yeah. But as soon as you realize you got to give back to really get the most out of it.
Right.
That's when you see the growth in people. Like, and to hear you say that you figured that out fairly early on, I mean, that's great.
Yeah. I mean, just from watching him, just seeing what he was doing,
it's like role modeling, right?
Yeah. It was like, man, well, that's what he's doing, and it's working out.
Did that shit here for years.
Yeah.
If I do that, it's gonna happen. All right, I'll do that. It works.
Yeah. And it's so cool. So I'd love to hear a little bit of his story in terms of how did he get into.
You were here to talk to me. No.
Well, listen.
He's selfish, man.
He's an interesting fella, and then you're the offspring of that, and obviously, like, I want to get into your story, but I think his story leads into your story, obviously, because what was it that got him into Porsches and got him going into this? And then you were born into it, so I know that, and I want to hear that part, but also, like, what was it that got him? I mean, I'm sure you've talked to him about, like, what made him love Porsches so much.
So I always asked him these kind of questions.
Yeah.
My mom will tell me my memory's faulty, like, I mean, I was asking questions.
We'll get your mom to fact check this.
Please don't. I remember talking to my dad about the cars, right? And his first job was like sweeping floors at a mechanic shop at a gas station or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think his first boss had a 59A coupe. And my dad loved that car.
Yeah. Wait, which car is that?
A 356.
Yeah. Oh, it is.
A 1959 356A coupe.
Yeah. Okay.
And my dad saw the car, loved the car, wanted to work on the car, wanted to own the car. And then one day the guy said he wanted to sell it. My dad bought it and then proceeded to wreck it on the way home. Destroyed the car.
Oh.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, I don't think he told anybody. He just, the car got wrecked.
That's embarrassing.
And he continued to pay it off or whatever. But like, I think that was like kind of his foray into Porsches. Like, he fell in love with the car. He had to have it. Then he had it and destroyed it.
Yeah.
But he was never a great driver, like at speed. My dad was a great mechanic, but we all have our things that we're good at.
Right.
But anyway, long story short is he always was good with cars, and he was a American car guy and did Corvettes, Camaros, all kinds of muscle car shit.
Back when he was in New York.
Back in New York, right?
Yeah.
And then like he started working on stuff, and he's like, I don't want to work on these cars. They're not fun. The
Corvettes and the
he like wasn't having the fun, and then he started working on sports cars, and he really enjoyed himself. And then he came out to, he was into VWs a lot, and he was hot rodding VWs, and he drove out here in February of 74, 75 with his buddy, and came to the valley, and it was February. It was 70 and sunny here, and it was like snowing and freezing ass cold in New York. And he called his people, and he's just like, hey, sell my shit, pack the rest, mail it to me. I'm never coming back.
Yeah.
So he came out here on vacation, and he was on vacation until he died.
I understand, yes.
So he landed here on a Friday, called some friends from New York that were living in LA, couch surfed until Monday. On Monday, he called the local Porsche dealership and had a job.
Oh, nice.
He had a job the next day.
Yeah.
And it was Merlin Olsen Porsche Audi in Encino.
Yeah.
Which I think is now where Encino Mercedes is, which used to be, I can't remember, Auto Stiegler.
Yeah.
So anyway, he worked there for a little while, for like a year or two, and somewhere in there he met my mom, and then he was drinking. And I think that made work in that place difficult for him, and he went looking for work elsewhere. And I think he was offered a really good position at Fulmer Porsche Audi, but that was out in like Riverside.
Oh,
and so he's at work one day, and he's living with my mom, and he gets a call that she's in a car accident, and it took him like forever to get back to her from Riverside.
She was in the...
My mom was in a car accident, and it took my dad like 2 hours to get from Riverside to where my mom was, and he's like, I can't do this. Like, no way am I going to be making this drive. Like, God forbid something like this happens. And so I think they had recently been married, so they took the money from their wedding and they opened TLG. And so that's how TLG kind of came to fruition.
Yeah.
And there was, I guess, he started in a sweeping floors, and then he learned from the mechanics, and then he showed proficiency, and then he started doing it, and my dad was naturally good at being a mechanic. Like, he was just one of those guys where he could fix anything.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to be that son or the child of someone who's really good at something innately.
Yes.
Like, it seemed easy for him. And so, like, growing up around it, I always heard how great a mechanic he was, and so I tried to learn from him as much as possible. But I always struggled, Like, it's only now that I'm really feeling fairly confident about my abilities.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. With anything, it just takes practice. And you do it every day. And I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years, like every day for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
And I'm just now starting to feel confident enough to say that I'm really good at my job, but I've been doing this, and I've been doing a really good job for many years, but I just haven't felt confident enough to say it.
Yeah.
And but I'm also trying to remain humble, and there's always somebody better than you. There's always somebody smarter and faster and stronger and whatever. So every day I just try to push harder and do as good as I think my dad would do.
Yeah. And that's awesome, because I was thinking about, like, with the humble thing, I was coming up with this point a little earlier about how he, was helping me and doing all these things. And I had no idea he's this dude in the Porsche world. And then I'm seeing him, like, he was in, like, magazines and stuff. I'm like, what? Oh, this guy's like some well-known Porsche mechanic that does all this incredible work. And, like, you see him sitting by his car in the magazines, and I was like, what the hell? You would never know that, because he wouldn't bring it up.
No.
Like, it was just like, whatever. Yeah, that's just part of it.
I forced him to do that shit.
Yeah.
Because, I watched for years that these people were getting accolades that I don't believe that I'm not saying they didn't deserve, because
but
I felt that my dad also deserved them and was not receiving them. So I pushed him into the spotlight, whether he wanted to be there or not. Like, I forced him out into the community. So, because my dad was always the mechanics. When people had problems and they ran other shops, they couldn't fix it, they called my dad. Yeah. So, call Tony, he'll fix it.
Yeah.
And my dad would do gearboxes for other shops, or do motors for other shops.
Yeah.
And nobody would know that he was there doing all the things, and everybody else would take the credit for the work that he did, which he didn't care about.
Right.
He got fucking paid. He didn't give a shit else.
He got the credit in that payment.
That's right, exactly. But as you get older, it's for me, what are you working for, right? You're working for your family and you're working for the payday, but also it's nice to be recognized for the things that you do.
Absolutely.
And I felt that he was deserving of the recognition. So
Absolutely.
I pushed him into the
Oh, nice.
spotlight.
Yeah.
You know, I pushed him out. He's not a very personable guy, you know? So I dragged him kicking and screaming into like events and shit like that.
Yeah.
And I would introduce him to all the people that I knew. And he goes, how do you know all these people? I'm like, because I say hi.
Yeah.
Because I like read books.
Well, that's your mom, and the whole like, how you doing? How you doing? How you doing?
Well, that's me. Yeah. I get the best of both of them, right?
Yeah,
like, as a kid,
exactly.
I get the best and worst.
Yeah. Well, whatever. We all do. Yeah. But it's an awesome combination to have that.
I'm very fortunate.
Yeah.
You know? So anyway, that's kind of how my dad got into the business, and then you know, again, I came up in the shop. Just as a kid, you grow up around this stuff, and I kind of keep my children separate from it. Just because it's different now than it was then. Like the cars are worth so much more now.
Yeah.
That, like when I was 2 swinging a hammer, if I hit a car, it's $50 to fix it. You know, like if my 2-year-old or 4-year-old, whatever, swinging a wrench and he hits a car, it's $10,000. That's a shit ton of money. You know.
Yeah.
So it's a little different. My son loves coming to the shop and seeing the cars and being around them. He loves getting dirty because he's a kid and dirt is cool.
Yeah.
But, you know, he's not quite into going fast yet, you know.
Yeah.
My daughter, I don't know. I haven't really brought her to the shop. I hope that even if they don't want to be mechanics, which I don't give a shit, like that's fine. I hope that they appreciate this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I hope that they have an affinity for what it is that I do, you know, in some form or other. Like they can appreciate the work or the cars or the effort. You know,
right.
That's all I
Absolutely.
hope for. I don't want them to have to feel like they need to do this shit or whatever. I just remember growing up, people were like, "Hey, what do you want to be when you grow up?" I said, "I want to be a race car driver." Well, what if you're not? I want to be a mechanic.
Yeah.
That's it. That's always, fucking as long as I can remember. And my dad would always say, "I don't want you to be a mechanic." Why not?
Right.
You're a mechanic.
Yeah.
I don't want you to work so hard. Well, what's to say that any other job you're not working your ass off?
Yeah, right.
So you might as well work your ass off doing something that you want to do. So,
and that you love. Yeah. Hell
I mean,
yeah.
this is not an easy job. It's physically taxing. Yeah, it's emotionally taxing.
Yeah.
You know, like when shit doesn't go right, you take it home with you, you know,
Yeah.
and your body aches and you get cuts and bruises, but it's totally worth it.
Yeah.
It's totally worth it, you know?
Yeah, and it's funny. I mean, you say you wanted to be a race car driver because then you guys put together a race car and you're going up to the track and doing that for years, and I mean,
Beyond amateur, man. That's like the most amateur race cars driver shit ever. But I got to play with the toy.
hey, whatever.
Like, it's an adult toy.
You got to kind of live out that idea. Maybe
fantasy.
you're not on the level of the big time guys, but you're still having a great time doing it, and
it got me in touch with some big time guys. Like, I know a couple of professional race car drivers, and they're the nicest people in the world.
Yeah.
But doing it as a really amateur, like super novice amateur guy, like, but you get put into contact with really cool people, and you get really cool experiences, and you learn from them, and you can hear the stories, and that's all it's about for me.
Yeah.
Just having fun.
So how did you kind of go about that, putting together that car? Like, was that a car that just was here at the shop? And then
sort of. That car that we own, the red race car, that car my dad built for a client. And the client raced it a little bit. It was a little more car than the client was prepared for. Like, it always worked. Where his other car was always broken, so he could wear the suit, walk around the paddock and say he was a race car driver, but not actually have to race.
Yeah.
So, like, the Porsche always worked. So he would have to run, and it was just a little too much for him, I think.
Yeah.
And so the car didn't get a lot of use. Then a few years on, I bought my own 911, put a motor in it, and started doing track day stuff.
Is that the yellow?
My yellow car. Yeah. And so I started using that car for track stuff, and as I got faster and faster, I modified the car more and more and more. And the car was such a good car, I had gotten to the point where the next step was to cut it up, put a roll cage in it, and make it a race car. And my dad and I sat down and we talked, and he's like, "That's a really good car. You don't want to cut that thing up. Let's go buy a car that's already cut up." Right? So we went and we talked to the owner of the red car, and he was willing to sell.
The one you had
The one that my dad had built for the client became available to us.
Oh, yeah, nice.
And so for multiple reasons, we purchased that car and plugged a race motor in it, and like a fresh motor, and that was the weirdest, most awkward move I ever made. Plugged a race motor in it, a fresh one, did the brakes and all the bullshit. Took it out and started hammering, and then started going faster and breaking things and fixing them and making them better. And so the car evolved, and my dad got to live out the fantasy of being the chief mechanic on a race car.
Yeah.
I got to live out the fantasy of being a race car driver. And we got to do it together, and it was really cool.
Yeah,
to
that's
like
awesome.
have that moment with my dad.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's super cool.
That's my general story.
Yeah, no, and that's a lot of fun and really cool that you got to do that with your dad. And it's funny that it works like that. Like he never wanted to be a race car driver, but you did.
Yeah.
He wanted, and his whole thing was he could fix anything on the planet.
So my dad, we would talk. I go, Dad, you want to take the car? And he goes, No, I don't want to drive. I go, what the fuck you mean you don't want to drive? Like everybody wants to drive. He goes, I don't want to drive.
Yeah.
I go, well, what are we doing this for? He goes, you know what makes me happy? Watching my cars go fast. Yeah. I like to make the car go fast, and you make the car go fast, so that's good. We're good. Okay, Dad.
Perfect.
Whatever you say.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny, though, because, like, he passes away. I run the car a couple more times, had some problems with the car, put it away. I haven't gotten back to it in 2 years. I told you the story, but
yeah.
I don't want to get into that right now. But what I want to tell you is that I now have a client who, over the last 2 racing seasons, we have built a race program, right?
Yeah.
And we've taken, he brought me the car. When he brought me the car was a back of the pack car. He was
Which car is this?
It's the Ether sponsored Spec 911, the black one. It's not here. It was here earlier. It left.
Yeah.
But so when we met that car, it had been serviced by another shop, and things had fallen apart with the client and the other shop for whatever reasons. I don't know what they are, and I don't care. Car comes to me. The car is a back of the pack car. The driver is a front of the pack driver. Together, you get a mid pack result, right?
Yeah.
So he comes to me and he says, Marco, do whatever this car needs. I want to go racing and I want to win. Okay.
Yeah.
We take the whole car apart, back to front, put it back together. He goes out and he starts winning.
Nice.
Right? It feels great. It feels great
Hell
for
yeah.
him, feels great for the shop and for me and my guys who really put our effort into it. And over the last 2 years, we went from the back of the pack to the front of the pack, fighting for national champion in Spec 911. And we lost last year. We came in second, and it was a hard-fought season, and there was a lot of respect gained on both sides from the guy who won, who's been winning for years, and we're finally giving him something to be afraid of.
Yeah.
And for us, it feels real good to make a car go from the back to the front.
Hell yeah.
And this year has been a struggle. We've had some ups and downs. The driver is
same car or
same car. The car got wiped out in one of the races. The driver lost the back end, hit the wall, wiped the back of the car off completely. Right. And so we had to disassemble and rebuild the whole car in a month. Right. Among all of the regular service work that we do. So it became a priority for us. Because we want to see this car win. And then there was the event, the Rennsport reunion, and my driver, he took that car and he won Rennsport reunion, and we get to hold that trophy until the next Rennsport. So that's it's pretty big for us. We're really happy with these results.
I didn't know that. That's amazing, dude. Yeah, congrats on that.
So how does that correlate to what my dad was telling me? Well, I now understand what he means when he said he wants to see his cars go fast, because it's your work on display, and it's the results of the hard work is the trophy, is the podium finish.
Exactly.
And, we turn into our parents, right?
Right.
So, I'm not a race car driver anymore. My car's been sidelined for 2.5 years. But I get to be my dad, and I get to watch my guy go to the front and win. And it's just really...
That's so cool.
It's very parallel.
Yeah. No, it's so cool how it's kind of gone that direction, and you've kind of I know they're big shoes to fill, but you're stepping in that direction, and that's really neat that it's kind of going that way. And like I said, when I got here, I was like, damn, there's a bunch of cars it's just in and out, and that's right, that it's thriving and going well, and things are happening. And no, man, but it's really cool to be sitting in your shop and just looking at all the different cars. Obviously, this is a 356 right here.
That's a 62, yeah.
Yeah, and like I was saying earlier, to me, the natural body style was it's 911, but there's so many different ones, and I was just kind of interested to hear a little bit about the different models of them and why they're different and how they improved along the years, and also a little bit of the story of Porsche, because I think it's pretty fascinating, like that, the dude that was Ferdinand
Porsche. Yeah. Well, I don't want to get into too much of the history part of it.
Yeah.
It's easy to end up talking about World War II.
Right.
Better to avoid that part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Because we all do things we're not proud of.
Yes.
But it's funny. Porsche really sees itself as kind of an engineering and design house, right?
Yeah.
And they do a lot of stuff for a lot of people, even if you don't know it. But the 911 and the 356 with the engine behind the rear axle, that's really what they're known for.
Right.
Is having this hunk of metal hanging out behind the rear axle, and you get this pendulum effect, right? Because all the weight is swinging the back of the car around. So essentially, if you look at the history of Porsche, it's all about outsmarting physics, right? Because you want this car to handle well, but based on physics, it's not going to, because there's all that weight and the momentum of, the car being swung from the back. And so if you look at the history and the design and the engineering of Porsche from the 356 to the current 992, it's all about harnessing the weight and getting it to do what they want it to do, right?
Yeah.
There are so many advantages to having a rear-wheel drive sports car, especially with one that has all the weight on the back, right? A rear engine, rear wheel drive, it has a lot to do with traction, and acceleration and, moving the car down the road. When you turn it into a corner, there's nothing over the front wheels. So the car's supposed to go straight, right? So it's about learning how to balance that weight transfer and doing it. And then the evolution of the car is how to make that accessible to everybody, right? So nowadays, they're using rear steer technology to help move the back end around to follow the front or lead the car in certain ways so that it feels more neutral, but you still would have the benefits of the rear engine, rear wheel drive platform. I mean, it's awesome. Just to look at the history of the company and what they've done. And
so, real quick, what was the reason that they were so hell bent on having it in the back, like the engine in the back?
I don't know.
Like
I guess because that's how it's how they started with it. Like, and being
it
Germans,
seems like,
they're just like, we
like,
can make this work.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the worst German I've ever done. But like, they're hell bent on making their design work at any cost, right?
Yeah.
But it's not a bad design.
Okay. Yeah.
It's just not it.
Wasn't
it
typical.
Is a bad design, but it's not though, because like it works.
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, I like the way they drive. Like I like a car that's tail happy. I like the back end to move around. I like the way it feels. Front engine, front wheel drive cars feel dumb and numb and stupid to me. Like
and they're like pulling you along.
Yeah,
and
like, they the wheel jacks around or whatever.
Yeah.
With a 911, like on a racetrack, you kind of lead them from the back. Like
right.
There's a lot of like sliding and pitching and catching, and if the back of the car isn't leading the front, you're really not going fast enough.
Right.
Like that's kind of how it feels. And if you follow a 911 on a vintage car more than the modern ones, but if you follow one around the racetrack, they're alive, man. Like the back of the car is moving into the corner before the front of the car on the really fast guys, and it's fun. It's a dance. It's really cool to watch,
Yeah.
Preference wise, I like the 70s. I like that. My favorite, if I had to take one car forever, probably a 1970 911S. I really.
Oh well, yeah.
I like the mechanical injection. I like the car. I think that was the first year where Porsche got everything right. They had got the wheelbase correct. They had gotten the weight correct. They had gotten the amenities inside just right. Like everything like ergonomically feels good. It's not too fat, not too skinny.
Yeah.
Not too far away, not too close. The gearbox is a little vague, but it's positive. The gear location is vague, but when you find what you're looking for, it's a real positive feel to get it in and out of the gear. And then eventually it becomes second nature and muscle memory,
Right.
the motor, it doesn't make a ton of torque or horsepower, but the way it makes its power is very fun. It's easy to handle. They like to spin. They need to spin in order to make the power available.
Yeah.
So they run between, an S will run between 5,000 and 7,000 RPMs.
Oh, yeah.
And the noise is glorious, and then in 70, they used a lot of aluminum parts on the car. They used an aluminum deck lid and an aluminum center panel. And that's like some race car shit, man.
Yeah.
Like, that's race car shit to keep the weight down. And, it's little things like that they did to improve the cars that are very subtle and very special. 1970 is kind of a one-year-only car. In 71, they started doing things to make it more attractive to the masses. They started covering things up in the engine compartment, and they changed a little bit of the wiring stuff, and like they made a few changes. And then 72 was a totally different car, and 73 another totally different car, and they just got more and more refined. But I think further and further away from that light, spindly but excited and fun to drive car. As they got heavier, they got a little more bulky feeling. I don't know. They're not bad, but if I had a preference, it would probably be the car behind you.
Yeah.
The car behind you is 69, but generally speaking, it would be that car.
So that's that's the one that's your favorite make.
Yeah, 911S. That's the
Yeah.
one. 2.2 liters, close ratio gearbox, the whole thing. It'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, my brother had a couple different ones that we went across country and then met you at Rensport with that. And there was a good little group of cars. It was the Monty's car.
Still has it too.
Like what did it win that award?
The GT award with the R group.
Yeah,
that was a cool car.
That was right, because you basically built that whole car, right?
Well, sort of. I mean, I found someone approached me. The guy who Luke bought his car approached me with Mondy's car.
Yeah.
He says, I got this car, I want to sell it. It's a 74 European Carrera clone. Or 75 European Carrera clone.
Yeah.
I said, great car, let's see if we can find it a home. I called Mondy, and I called a couple of people, and Mondy was the only one who really listened to me. And I'm like, dude, this is the car for you. You're always bitching about how you want an early car. This is the car. He goes, well, I don't know. I said, listen, buy this fucking car. And so I literally said that to him, and he's like, okay, fine, I'll buy the fucking car. And so the car's been nicknamed the BTFC.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, he still has it?
He still has it.
Yeah.
And I mean, he did his rally stuff to it, which I got to admit, it's not terrible. Like the extra lights and the stickers and whatever. But, we did suspension, brakes. I think someone broke the motor. We fixed the motor for it. Car's a rocket, and it's not an early car. It's a 75, so it's a square bumper car, but it's an early square bumper car. So it's got narrow guards. It's got the right vibe. It's still thin. It's still lighter on its feet. It hadn't gotten as portly as they became later.
Yeah.
And he did it right. Like he didn't put too much crap in it. He kind of kept things lean.
Yeah.
And the car's bitching. I mean, I love that car.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool.
Mechanically injected 2.7.
Yeah, and just going to that Rensport thing was cool to see. Like, it took the award, for the for that year, and just to go there and see all of those cars. Was it the R Group?
The R Group, yeah.
Yeah, the R Group. Like, they have that whole lot full of amazing cars.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, I talked to, like, your dad actually put it into perspective for me, because I had said something to him. I was like, I'm not that into cars, I'm like, I'm just not. I'm more into the filmmaking thing and these other, like, art stuff and whatever. And he was like, it's a piece of art, dude. And I was like, oh. And he was like, if you look at it like that, he's like, look at each one of these is different. It's all unique. Everything's like, he's like, it's a piece of art. And I was like, and then that put it into perspective for me. So that trip was actually a lot of fun, because I started to look at all the cars differently than I ever had before, and started to see, man, each one of them is unique and has its own little, like, personality to it. And they were all different pieces of art. And it was like, it was just a whole new way to see it.
Yeah, they're all 911s.
Yeah.
But it's how, the colors are wild. Some of these the colors are insane.
Yeah.
The blues and the yellows and the reds and the oranges. They're beautiful. So from a color perspective, they really check all the boxes. Porsches in the 70s were the best colors.
Yeah.
And it's starting to come back around. People are starting to really realize that, and they have the paint to sample program now. But also, it's it's kind of like a Christmas tree, right? Everybody hangs their ornaments differently,
right?
And
exactly.
so it's a canvas, and everybody paints their canvas differently.
Yeah.
you know, and you can put 5 911s next to each other and they're all different. They got the same basic shape,
right?
But they're all different.
Well, that was what was so cool to see that. Just the whole, it was like a sea of all different. And obviously, then there was the race cars that were on the track and all that kind of cool stuff.
Well, those are bitching. I mean,
it was. It was amazing to be a part of it, and it really kind of changed me that weekend. I don't know what that was, 5-6 years ago or whatever. And it was like. That weekend kind of changed me because I was like, I really love this car, and I do love Porsches now because of it, because I saw it from a different perspective, and I just there is the infamous
Cocktail.
Matthew McConaughey story where
best story ever, man.
Oh man, that was something. But yeah, I don't think I've ever
told that story.
I don't think I've ever publicly told that story.
You don't need to.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you do one day, but I'll just never forget that. Cocktails.
But no, it was such a fun weekend, man, and so cool to do that. So awesome to hear that you're building race cars and still doing that, and the plan is to maybe get back out on the track driving.
I mean,
at some point?
Absolutely. So as I told you, you know, when my car came apart, right, when I took it apart to fix it, I had it fixed within a couple of weeks. Right. I had the car, the chassis, the paint, all that fixed in like 3 weeks. Yeah. 2.5 years ago. But I took the motor out of the car, and my dad and I had the conversation of he wanted to put fuel injection on it because it was carbureted before. Yeah. And so I went through the process of starting to put fuel injection on it, and I mean, it took longer than I expected because I had to get the pump done. I had to buy the parts. And then I had to find the time to fucking do it. And there just was no time. I had a young child at home, you know. Yeah. My wife, she was working nights. You know, she works late at night sometimes. So I had to be home. And just finding the time. And then after a day of work, do you really want to just keep working? Like, you know. And so every once in a while, I'd spend like a week of really late nights and I'd work on the motor. And, you know, finally I got to the point where it was done, right? Motor was done, ready to be put back in the car. Client comes in, car's got problems, you know, fuel lines are blown off the thing. He needs fuel lines. I happen to have a set of fuel lines on my race motor. So I sold him my fuel lines. 6 months go by before I can get new ones. You know, and so now I've got the fuel lines. They're not, I haven't installed them. Right. They're just sitting in a box on top of the motor. And so like that's kind of the cobbler's children wear no shoes or something like that. You know? Yeah. And so that's, you know, the Porsche mechanic doesn't drive a Porsche. I mean, I have my street car, but my race car is really low on the priority list. Yeah. It's not for sale. You know, I have dreams of one day putting it back together. And it's not going to take much, really. Yeah. But you put a lot more focus into the other car. Yeah, like a street car that I can literally drive to work and back every day. I meant the other race car that my client's car? Yeah, absolutely. That car, well, not only is he paying me to work on the car, but also, that helps. I mean, that's motivational right there. But that car is a program. That's a race program, right? Like he is actively campaigning that car, so it's very high priority. Right. Right? Like, so we, before a few months ago, we'll call it like 2 months ago, after a race, we were doing our standard check down and found a chunk of metal in the oil system. And looking at it, I realized what it was. And the motor was seconds from exploding. Like, you know, the short story is the oil pump drive gear, right? So like the lay shaft gear that is run by the crankshaft that turns the shaft that turns the oil pump. That gear had come loose on the shaft, okay? And so the only way to fix it is to take the whole motor apart. Yeah. So I tore the motor down, I fixed that, put the motor back together, and then the motor blew up. It was like the most debilitating explosion of a motor. Like it's just all the wind out of the sails, because like I put this motor together, we ran it on the dyno, it ran great, made tons of horsepower, ready to rock and roll. We go all the way up to to Thunder Hill, so like just outside of Sacramento. Yeah. Right? And we tow up there. I mean, it's a very expensive adventure, right? Yeah. Made 4 laps. Motor came apart. Man. So, you know, I mean, we brought the car back. I dissected the problem and found that one of the pistons had failed. It's not my fault that the piston failed. It was just a materials failure. Yeah. You know, did the piston fail because of what was happening in the motor before I took it apart? Like what caused the I don't know. It got all new pistons. That's all I know, right?
Yeah.
Took the oil system out of the car, cleaned everything. I rebuilt the motor again, put it back together a week ago, ran it on the dyno, made tons of horsepower, ran great. Took it out last weekend, ran it at the racetrack. It survived. Yesterday, I drained all the oil, looked at everything, adjusted the valves, did a nut and bolt check on the car, put it together, and sent it away today. And so this weekend, it's going to Sonoma for 3 races. Then it comes back to me again, and we're going to go through it, nut and bolt check again, change the fluids, flush the brakes, and then next weekend is the final race of the year. And depending on how things go at Sonoma, it could come down to the very last hour of the season in the endurance race.
Oh, nice.
So, this coming weekend is Sonoma. The following weekend is going to be at Buttonwillow out in Bakersfield.
Awesome.
So,
yeah, dude, that's cool as hell that you're so active in it. And it's funny to watch your mind working too when you're like, and then it's this and it's that. Like, I bet you probably couldn't sleep when that was like, why did this happen? And like,
so it broke, right? So like so we go up on Friday, it breaks on Saturday morning.
Yeah.
So now I'm stuck there until my flight home on Sunday night. Yeah. And I have to think about it and think about it. And everyone's talking to me, Marco, what's going on? I'm shut up and leave me alone. Like I didn't.
Yeah. You're in it.
Oh man, I was like so depressed.
Yeah.
And they were joking. They're like, "Oh, we had to put you on suicide watch, man. You were not looking good." And I'm like, "No." And it was not until yesterday that I felt better about it.
Oh, okay.
Because it had been rebuilt and run through its paces, and I saw it be okay, and I drove it, and I know it's fine.
Yeah.
But like, that was a month of just depression.
Yeah,
just pure, simple depression.
Yeah.
Like, I failed so miserably, but I didn't. It wasn't my fault.
Right.
The part failed.
Yeah.
But there's
But you
so
internalize
much
that.
of me in this process that,
absolutely. But that's what's so amazing, I think, about, your business too, is that you are so extremely passionate about it, and you take it personal when things aren't working right and flowing, and that's what makes TLG so incredible, and why people continue to come back. I mean, how many clients do you have that have had so many different cars with you throughout the years, and and they continue to do it, and like we said at your dad's memorial, it was like just cars and some really, really nice cars that were all lined up there, and just from the guys that have been through it for the years and years and years, and my brothers won, Mike's won, Luke's won, and Dave's had like the 911 T out here, I think.
The blue car, yeah.
Yeah, he had that out here. I think, have you worked on the white one too?
I haven't, but I drove the white one before he screwed it all up.
Yeah.
Before he made it a race car.
Yeah. But it was cool that they, it was right after that cross country trip, they parked a bunch of them here, and then you did a bunch of work on them and kind of fix them up after the trip.
You remember when your brother called me from Area 51?
Yeah.
Like the aliens zapped him and he's stuck on the side of the road.
Rachel, Nevada or something it was called, yeah.
And I remember he sent me this picture of him, and he's wearing like this jumper.
Yeah,
he put on his mechanic's jumper, but he still has his loafers
he has
on.
these like $1,000 loafers on. Everybody was breaking his balls so bad about that.
Yeah, and he called me and he's like, "Oh man, car doesn't run." Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, "You checked the coil?" I'm like, "What color's your coil?" He says, "Black coil. It's brand new." I said, "Where'd you buy it?" And he told me.
Yeah.
I don't want to name names, but he told me where he bought it. I'm like, "There's your problem."
Yeah.
I'm in California. He's in wherever the hell he's at.
Yeah.
He's in Area 51.
Nevada.
Yeah, Nevada. And I fixed it over the phone. He's like, "Oh man, that was it." That coil was in that son of a bitch the day he sold that car.
Oh man,
it was funny, man.
He put the old one back.
Put the old one back in.
Yeah,
the one that had no problems. Why the hell did you take the fucking thing out?
Because it's like that. It's like that doctor mentality of like, oh well, I should just get it all brand new before.
So when he's in there fixing my knee, it's like, oh well, you need a new leg.
Yeah,
We're just gonna take that leg out and put a new one in.
Exactly.
This one's titanium. You're gonna be fine.
You'll be fine.
Fuck out of here.
But it was funny how quickly you diagnosed it. Like on the phone, I actually have a little video of the trip. I'll throw that on the end of this of the podcast on YouTube, and it's us kind of driving across the country. But you're in that part where it's like he's on the phone, like, "Oh yeah, I don't know," and then he's like, "Well," and then Marco figured it out in 2 seconds, and then we're back on the road. You know what it was, and we were back on the road and everything was fine. But it was kind of crazy driving through the mountains there in the carbureted cars, how they would just choke out at that elevation and not really be able to make it. And it was funny. So also it shows the difference between my brother and I, because he's in the operating room all the time. You know, he's a bone doc, and he's always seeing all these problems. Somebody went, skydiving, did this. So anything I'll do, he's like, oh, don't do that. I'm like, dude, I'm a different guy than you. Like, I'm gonna take a risk
on an electric fence. I'm good. I'm gonna be fine.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm like, we're driving through Colorado in the mountains, and I had a GoPro on the side of the car. Somehow it just flies off, and I'm like, fuck, like we need to go get that. He's like, nah, I don't give a shit. Like, it was his GoPro, and I was like, no, I don't care about the GoPro. I want the footage because it looks so good. And he's like, I'm not doing that. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, just let me go get it. He's like, dude, the road, the turn, like, it's so dangerous. Like, it's so risky to go. I was like, yeah, I don't give a fuck. Like my mentality was like, I'll take the chance. He's like, no, not letting you do it. Like, and it's all because of that mentality, like, of being in the operating room and seeing all of these people getting hurt. And he's like, we're not doing it. It's not worth it. I'm like, it's kind of worth it to me.
It's kind of worth it. Yeah. That would have been some good footage.
Yeah, but we had a bunch of good clips. I'll throw that on the end of it. But man, it's been good sitting down and chatting with you and seeing you. And I haven't seen you in a minute. And you're deep in the kid world.
So you're getting there.
Yeah, I'm almost there.
Dude, your life is going to change more than you ever could possibly know.
I have no idea, but I know everyone says this, so I just am trusting that it will be different.
It's going to be the greatest, most amazingly best, worst thing you've ever done for yourself. Seriously, it is the ultimate high and the ultimate low at the exact same time.
Oh, yeah.
Forever.
Forever,
man.
Forever.
Like for real. Like the things that are important today are gonna cease to be important the moment that kid pops its head out.
And it was funny too, and I don't know if you had this sort of happen, but just right when she got pregnant, that sort of started to happen. I was like, oh, all the shit I was worried about, like, doesn't matter.
Doesn't mean shit.
Yeah, and then I even more so, obviously, when the baby arrives. Yeah. But instantaneously when that happened, all the shit I was worrying about, I was like, who gives a shit?
Yeah, right. Well, you don't I mean, again, you're going to look back and you're going to be like, oh, man. Like, the free time, gone. Gone,
I think about
man.
that sometimes. Just going on a jog to
Your
try to...
selfish life that you are living currently is gone. So anyway, but congratulations. My condolences to you. Yeah.
Congratulations and condolences all at
the
once.
same time. But it's like literally the greatest and worst thing ever, because the only thing you're going to ever worry about now is the kid, and you're going to worry about that kid constantly. Yeah. But it's also the biggest joy of your life,
Yeah. Like, dude, I'm excited, man. We're very excited.
You're going to be just fine. You're going to be a good dad.
I appreciate it, man.
And lucky for the kid, you're going to be doing it, in sobriety too, because the crazy of
I think about that a lot, and I'm very, very grateful that I found this thing before we had kids, because I was not the guy that should be raising a kid at that point.
There is video evidence of that, sir. It's so funny, man. Like, I look back and I'm like, I remember watching those videos. And then, like, the person that I met, like the person I met was so different from those videos.
Oh, yeah.
And the juxtaposition, and like it's
There's
very
still
surreal.
a crazy man up there,
no
but
shit,
no.
But like it's really nice to have gotten to know you away from all of that.
Oh, hell
but like to have also, I'm glad you guys did that shit.
Yeah.
Because it was part of my formative years.
Yeah.
To watch that. Like there's some little clips of girls at parties that I need to know who they were, because I know these people. Like otherwise they wouldn't be in the movie.
Oh yeah. We knew all of that. Yeah.
Anyway,
but dude, so much fun, and been awesome getting to know you for sure, and good to see you right now, and good to see that the place is thriving and doing well. And
I'd like to think it is.
Yeah. Well, it is.
Lights are still on.
Exactly. I came by, it's just cars lined up and all, and it's great, and they all look real good. So
thanks, man.
Dude, thanks for chatting.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Hell yeah.